tutorial video. I hope you will learn something new for today, and don't forget that learning is fun. So again, I am Miss Ingilio and I will be your teacher in science. Don't forget that honesty is the best policy. So before we proceed to our discussion, let us first have a review of what we have discussed last time. We discussed about force and motion. Again, what is motion? Motion is a change in the position of an object over time. How will you know if an object has moved? You use a reference point. Now, what is a reference point? A reference point is a stationary or not moving object used for comparison to determine if an object has moved. For example, we use a tree, we use traffic lights, or houses as a reference point. For example, we have a tree, and on the tree we have a ball. Watch what will happen to the ball. Did the ball move? Yes, it moved because it changed its position from being under the tree away from the tree. What causes an object to move? Again, that is because of a force. Remember, all motion is due to forces acting on objects. What is a force? Again, a simple definition of a force is a push or a pull. So we have here a ball in which we're going to apply a force using our hands and watch what will happen to the ball. So the ball moved and so motion happened. Aside from seeing force as a simple push or pull, force can be viewed as any influence capable of producing a change in the state of motion of an object. So aside from pulling and pushing an object, there are also other forces that acting on the object that makes its state of motion change. What changes can force do to motion? Force can make object move starting from a rest position. So from not moving, when you apply a force, the object can now move. Force can make a moving object stop. So we have here an example of a dribbling ball. So when the ball stopped, there is a force that is acting on the object that made it stop. Force can change the direction of moving object. So we have here a baseball and a baseball bat. So when the ball hits the baseball bat, it changes its direction. Forces can be identified as balanced and unbalanced force. Now, what is balanced force? So from the word itself, balance, meaning to say there are equal forces. Example, a hanging pen. Are there forces acting on the pen hanging in the wall? Yes, there are forces acting on the object even though the pen is at rest. Now, what are those forces acting on the pen and the string? The tension force, which is pulling the string upward, and the force of gravity, which is pulling the pen downwards. Now, let's identify what is tension force. Tension force, which has a symbol of capital letter T, is the force which transmitted through a string, rope, or wire when it is pulled tight by forces acting at each end. So meaning to say, tension force are the forces that are produced by the string which pulls the object upward. Another example, a jar on top of the table. Are there forces acting on the jar? Yes, there are forces acting on the object even though the jar is at rest. Now again, what are those forces? You have the normal force, and again, the other force is the force of gravity. So the normal force, let's identify again what is normal force. Normal force, which has a symbol of capital letter F and small letter n, is the upward push exerted by an object in the table. So the normal force is the object or is the force that pushes an object upwards. So any objects that is on the table, it has a normal force. So to summarize, both the tension force and normal force counteract the pull of gravity that acts on objects, which makes them to stay at rest. The objects remained at rest because the forces acting on the pen and on the jar are equal in magnitude and in opposite direction, and they lie along the same line of action. The forces are said to be balanced. So, for example here, yung example natin kanina, you have the hanging pen and the jar on top of the table. So, the tension force and the normal force counteracts the force of gravity which pulls the objects downward. So, what happens is that it counteracts, so meaning to say, nagka-cancel out yung forces kaya hindi sila gumagalaw. Because both of them exerts the same magnitude of force and in equal direction. So, again, what is balanced force? Force are two forces acting in opposite directions on an object and equal in size. So, example natin kanina, yung ballpen at yung tali. Yung tali, nag-exert siya ng tension force which pulls the string or the pen upward, while the force of gravity pulls the objects downward. So, they are in opposite direction. So, ang nangyayari, they cancel out the forces. Aside from that, yung example natin kanina, yung jar na nasa taas ng table, so the jar exerts a normal force that pushes the object upward, while the force of gravity pushes or pulls the objects downward. So they are in opposite direction, upward and downward, and both of them exert the same amount of force. So what happens is that they cancel out each other, so hindi gumagalaw yung object. So anytime there is a balanced force on an object, the object stays at rest or continues to move at the same speed and in the same direction. So remember that if there is a balanced force, the object will not move, or it will continue to move at the same speed and in the same direction. Now, if there is balance, there is also unbalanced force. So, let's try to identify what is unbalanced force. Unbalanced force These are the forces that are not equal and they always cause the motion of an object to change the speed and direction that is moving. So in unbalanced force, the objects are moving. Sa balanced force, they are not moving. And in unbalanced force, the forces are not equal. So from the word itself, unbalanced, hindi equal or hindi pantay yung puwersa na nangyayari dun sa object. Example, in a tug of war, one team pulls harder than the other. The resulting action or the net force will be that the rope will change its motion in the direction of the force with the greater strength. So we have here Team A and Team B. In the Team A, isa lang ang member. Sa Team B, dalawa ang member. Sino kaya ang may mas malakas na puwersa or sino kaya ang mananalo sa dalawang team? Walang iba kundi yung Team B. Kasi dalawa yung member niya, so ibig sabihin mas magiging malakas yung puwersa ng Team B. Unlike sa Team A na isa lang ang member, so mahina ang puwersa niya compared dun sa dalawa, kaya ang mangyayari, mahihila siya ng Team A. So there is an unbalanced force. Combining force. So when we say combining force, we are just going to combine the forces that are happening in an object. For you to determine the net force or unbalanced force, you have to recognize those forces that act along the same line of action. The algebraic sign positive and negative are used to indicate the direction of forces. So we are going to use the positive and the negative signs that you have studied in your math subject here in forces to indicate their directions. So unlike signs, are used for forces acting in opposite directions. So kapag magkaiba yung direction ng forces ng objects, unlike sign ang ginagamit. Isang positive, isang negative. Like signs are used for forces acting in the same directions. So if the forces are acting in the same direction, parehong pupuntahan, like signs ang ginagamit, both positive, pwede ring both negative. But the common use or commonly used is both positive. For example, in the case of the book lying on top of the table, the force of gravity and normal force are assigned in opposite directions. So the normal force pushes the book upward, the force of gravity pushes the book downwards. The positive sign is for normal force, while the negative sign is for the force of gravity. So for example, we have the force of 5 newtons. So ang magiging value ng normal force ay positive 5 newtons at ang magiging value naman ng force of gravity ay negative 5 newtons. So what will be the net force along the line? So pagsasamahin na natin sila. In solving a problem, we use GRESA method. So again, we're going to use the GRESA method in which it is an acronym of different words. Pag sinabing letter G, it is the given or it states for the given, while R states for required, E states for equation, S states for solution, and A states for answer. Again, the problem states that the book stays at rest because it has a normal force of 5 newtons and gravitational force of 5 newtons also. Let's find out what will be the net force of the book. So the given are 5 newtons for normal force and negative 5 newtons for the gravitational force. The required is the net force kasi yun yung hinahanap. The equation for the net force is that Fn is equals to Fg, wherein Fn is the normal force while the Fg is the gravitational force. The solution is Fnet is equals to 5n plus the negative 5 newtons of gravitational force. So the answer will be 0. Did the book move according to the answer? No, because they move in equal magnitude and opposite direction. So the force is 0. So what happens is that it cancelled out both the forces. So what happened is that there is no movement in the object. Another example. The man in blue pulls the rope at 15 newtons and the man in red also pulls the rope at 15 newtons. What will be the net force? So again, let's find out the net force of the two men. In solving a problem, again, we use the Gresa method. The man in blue pulls the rope at 15 newtons and the man in red also pulls the rope at 15 newtons. So again, the given are 15 newtons and negative 15 newtons. Bakit? Because they pull each other at a different direction. Required net force, because that is the question or yun yung hinahanap. Equation for the Fnet is Fn plus Fg. So the solution is that 15 newtons plus the negative 15 newtons. So the answer is 0. So did they move? No, because again, they move in equal magnitude and opposite direction. Now let's proceed with the unbalanced force. In a situation when a pen is attached to a string and then you cut the string on the hanging pen, it will fall down because there is no force acting on the pen to counteract the pull of gravity. So, yung example natin kanina, we have yung ballpen na nakatali. So, yung ballpen at yung tali ay hindi gumagalaw because they counteract the forces that is happening on both objects. So, ngayon, ang gagawin natin, gugupitin natin yung tali. So, what will happen to the pen? It will fall down. Bakit siya nahulog? Kasi nawala na yung force or yung tension force na ginagawa nung tali. Ang naging present na lang is yung gravitational force na humihila sa ballpen paibaba. Kaya siya nahulog. Unbalanced force. So if you push the book on one side across, the book will move, but it will not continue moving if you don't continually push it. The book moves because of the applied force. So nag-apply tayo ng force kaya siya gumalaw. So the forces acting on these objects are unbalanced. For example, let two forces, 5 newtons and 3 newtons, act exactly opposite each other on a stationary ball. So we have here a ball. we're going to apply different forces of 5 newtons and 3 newtons on opposite side of the ball. So what is the net force action on the ball? So let's find out. So again, the problem is let two forces, 5 newtons and 3 newtons, act exactly opposite each other on a stationary ball. Again, the problem states that let two forces, 5 newtons and 3 newtons, act exactly opposite each other on a stationary ball. In solving a problem, we use again the Gressa method. So the given in the problem are 5 newtons and the negative 3 newtons, which counteracts the force. The required is the net force. The equation for the net force is Fn plus Fg, or you're just going to combine the forces. The solution for Fnet is equals to 5n plus the negative 3 newtons, and then the answer will be 2 newtons. So meaning to say, there is an unbalanced force on the ball. That is the reason why it is moving. Okay, so I hope you learned something new in my discussion. And as for your assignment, answer the learning task in your module assigned to your classwork for week number 2. So your learning task is already in your classwork, and you're going to answer that also with the learning activity sheets that will be passed for the next week. So I hope you learned something for today. This ends my discussion, and goodbye.